Hello, my name is Dr. Benjamin Keatinge, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this MA elective course in Literature and English Language Teaching. The purpose of today's module and lecture is to introduce you to the main features of this course and to outline the ways in which you will be expected to participate and the various learning tasks which this subject will require from you. So, if I may briefly, first of all, list the course objectives. We will be exploring the advantages and also the possible disadvantages of studying literature in the English language teaching classroom. We will also be examining theories advanced in favour of using literature in the ELT classroom. Not all language teachers believe that literature is useful. There is a large and growing literature, critical literature, both for and against the use of ELT. And in order for us to evaluate the importance of literature in English language learning, we must familiarise ourselves with some of the arguments for and against using literature. However, there's also a broader and deeper theoretical issue which we will begin this course by asking ourselves, and that is, how should we read literature and why? What is the purpose of studying literature? Is it simply a weekend pastime, or are there more serious issues at stake? Therefore, the first module that we will actually be taking in this course involves some definitions of literature, and with ourselves together trying to answer that question: why do we read or study literature in the first place? Now, I did mention that this course is both theoretical and practical, so a further objective of this elective course is to help you as teachers use literature, and therefore we will be exploring issues of course design, assessment, choosing appropriate course content for language learners. And I will try to suggest, based on my own experience, some useful strategies and ways of using short stories, novels and poems, as well as plays, in the EFL classroom. Now, in order for you to get the most from this elective course, there are certain things you need to be able to do. Obviously, this is an online module, and therefore your own computer skills are important. I'm assuming you are familiar with Word, you're familiar with the basic Windows package or Macintosh package that you can save documents, use email. You will need to familiarize yourself as soon as you can with the learning management system here at CU Libri, and you will need to check Libri regularly because that is where most of the course content will be posted. Now, I also make certain assumptions regarding your own competence in the English language. Literature, and even a course like this, which is more designed towards ELT practice, literature and teaching of literature nonetheless requires good language skills, and I will assume that you already possess those. But it's necessary for you to continue to strengthen them, and therefore I will expect you, when you give me your assignments, to make the best use of the various supports, academic supports like dictionaries, grammar reference books, online spell checks. This is one way in which you can polish your English and show your work to best effect. I'm also assuming, because you have studied English language and literature at undergraduate level, that you will have some grasp of the basics of literary interpretation, and that you will at least have read some of the great classics of the English canon, including perhaps some Shakespeare, novelists such as Charles Dickens, poets such as W.B. Yeats. Now, I'm going to talk now you through the course schedule. This is a 14-week course divided into weekly modules, and there you can see the list of topics we will be covering. First of all, in the first week, we're going to go to the root of the question and ask, what is literature? So we'll be looking at definitions of literature. Then, in the second week, we'll be asking, why do we read or study literature? Moving on from these basic theoretical questions, we will look at the various approaches which have been suggested in the field of English language teaching for the use of literature, including three models, basically the language model, the cultural, and the personal growth model. Then in week 4, we will look at some of the controversies and questions which have arisen regarding the use of literature in ELT, and we'll be very much analysing the for and against, pro and con case for the use of literature. In week 5, there will be a module on the whole question of choosing a text. How do you estimate the level of your students? How do you select a short story or a poem or series of poems or even a play which will interest the learners which you teach? Sixth, and equally important as text selection, is the assessment. We all know how motivated students are by the grades they will receive at the end of their course. Well, you need to, as literature teachers, choose an appropriate method of assessment, one which will hopefully challenge the students, but also measure various levels of skill and critical thinking, which we hope literature will foster in them. Then we get into the detail modules on specific genres of literature. So we will spend 2 weeks studying or looking at different ways of teaching prose fiction. And I've divided these 2 modules roughly into what I call essential issues, and secondly into strategies and activities. What I mean by essential issues is simply how do we break down a short story or a novel, looking at things like character, setting, theme, plot, narrative point of view. Secondly, in the second module, we'll look at more practical aspects, like what do you do with a short story in the classroom? How do you get students thinking about it? How do you get students talking about it? What activities can you do in the classroom? Similarly, in weeks 9 and 10, we will be breaking down poetry in the same way. So, in the first module, we will look at issues, technical, formal, should I say, issues where things like rhyme, rhythm, internal rhyme, diction, tone, metaphor, all these kinds of issues will be most important. Then in the second week, we'll look at more, shall we say, pedagogical, practical aspects where we will look at what strategies you can use to make poetry come alive in the classroom. Week 11 is devoted to teaching drama. Drama is perhaps one of the richest and most interesting, as far as students are concerned, genres that one can study, and obviously one of the most tempting and interesting things you can do with a play is act it. So in some ways, drama teaches itself, but there are nonetheless tricks, methods, strategies which you can learn and apply in your own classroom. Now, the old chestnut in week 12 is teaching Shakespeare, perhaps one of the most challenging things that can be done for teaching English to second language learners. We all know how forbiddingly difficult Shakespeare's language can be. Well, the purpose of this module will be to suggest approaches to Shakespeare. Now, following on from that and related partly to teaching Shakespeare is the whole issue of history, politics, culture. Often in these modules we will be looking at the text. What does the text say? What are the words on the page? And what will those words mean to your students? But equally important in many cases is the context. In other words, what happens around the text, particularly at the time the text was written. And it's perhaps appropriate that we should approach this question with Shakespeare in mind, because, of course, Shakespeare was writing at the dawn of the modern era, where so many social transformations and changes were happening. But the same can be said of many great writers, whether they be Irish, English, American, Australian. There is always a context to literature, and there's something interesting and valuable in the classroom in helping to communicate that context to your students. Then finally, in the 14th module, we will try and wrap this up, conclude, and try and see if we can identify some themes which have preoccupied us through the whole 14 modules, and whether we have reached any agreement amongst ourselves about the value and purpose of reading and teaching literature. Now, this module, although it's designed to be enjoyable, does require a certain amount of work, and that work will be formally assessed. And the majority of the assessment is based on your ongoing work. Each module requires an assignment, a short written assignment. There are also quizzes which go with each module. So you are expected to keep up with each module and, if necessary, answer some short questions in the shape of quizzes. And these will also check your participation and attendance, which will be measured by how accurately you respond to short answer questions, and also the relevance and clarity of your contribution to online forums. So briefly, there will be quizzes, forums, short written assignments. There will also be a final exam, which will be worth 20%. So you can see in this table the precise breakdown of your final assessment grade. And according to the grading scale here at Southeast European University, you will be assessed in a final percentage where 95 to 100 signifies an excellent 10 grade. Then you have 86 to 94% very good, which is a 9, 77 to 85% good, which is an 8, 68 to 76% satisfactory for a 7, and 60% to 60 to 67% passing 6. Now, it's my hope that all of you will succeed in achieving a good passing grade, but ultimately this is a course where your own input and motivation and contribution is what will dictate the result. And having said that, this introductory module must come with a warning, and that is to do with academic ethics. It's my experience that those of us that writing in a second language is particularly challenging, and where the topic may seem difficult, where the questions become more complex, there is sometimes a temptation to cut corners and borrow, or should I say steal, material from the internet. Now, you should, as graduate students, know what plagiarism is. If you don't, there is a document posted on Libri explaining what is plagiarism, why it's not acceptable, and what will happen if you are detected plagiarizing. So I must say here in this first module, please do not plagiarize. It will damage your final result. Finally, those are some of your responsibilities. Briefly, I want to summarize my role as your instructor. I will endeavor to offer whatever advice and assistance I can. I will offer you as much academic support as I can. I will suggest to you avenues of research. I will respond as quickly as I can to any questions you might have about particular assignments. I will endeavor to return your submitted work within a week of submission, and I remain open to any issues, problems you may face in completing this module. So, welcome to this course, and I look forward to hearing from you and getting to know you as well as we can. Thank you.